I'm going to talk about interdependence and compassion from Buddhist perspective under the theme of happiness and harmony. And first of all, I just want to let you know that from the Buddhist point of view, everything, all the existence are interdependent. So here I have a quote, one of the Indian scholar, by one of the Indian scholar, Nagarjuna. In Tibetan it says, something like that. And when we talk about interdependence, the concept of interdependence, from Buddhist perspective, we talk about three modes of interdependence. And the first one is dependent arising on cause and effect. And the second one is dependent arising on thought. And the third one, second one is dependent arising on parts, and third one is dependent arising on thought. So basically, what is dependent arising on cause and effect? And also actually, what we feel, what we see, everything around us, actually include all of us, from the Buddhist point of view, dependent arising on cause and effect. So one example that I can give you here, one or two couple of examples. One is here that if we think about the food chain, okay, where did we get energy to move our hand, to gesture our hand, to speak, to talk, and to listen? Actually, all this energy comes from the sun energy. And sun gives energy to the plants, and plant gives the cow and other living animals, and also we eat vegetables. Through that, every movement is a kind of effect of the sun energy. So in this context, you can see chains of interaction, chains of cause and effect. And another one, that is giving in one of His Holiness Dalai Lama's books, and example of dependent arising on cause and effect. So when we look at a flower, if we look at a flower, what do we need to have a perception of flower? And first, we need, of course, sense of eye faculty. And second, of course, there must be an object. In object, from Buddhist, we call condition. In this case, the flower itself is the condition. And third, in order to occur a perception of flower, there must be something, that directs the focus of the perceiver to the object. And through these causal interaction with the condition, with the object, we can have the connective perception of a flower. So now if we just think about what really constitutes in this event, and what is the concept of perception, and is the only operation of sense faculty, or is there only interaction between sense faculty and object, or is there something else? When we think about this way, in the end we find we cannot understand the concept of perception except in the context of complex series of cause and effect condition, right? And the second, dependent arising on part. What is dependent arising on part? And to the fact, all the phenomena, permanent, impermanent, from the Buddhist perspective, everything exists dependent on their part. And one very simple example that I can give you here is the pot. The pot actually exists in dependence on its parts, its coarse part, its subtle part. And the coarse part, its handle or lead, and the subtle part, the composition of its molecule. Without this essential composition, without these essential parts, the pot cannot exist in this concrete. So everything, even the tiny object, physically unbreakable thing has a spatial extent, thus they do have a part. So otherwise they cannot combine to make a larger object. And third, dependent arising on thought. And this is said to be the subtlest concept of interdependence. And when we talk about dependent arising on thought, we mostly talk about in the context of self. Because once we realize or once we know the true nature of self, then we can extend that knowledge to everything, to other objects. That's why I have Here I have one of the quotes from His Holiness Dalai Lama. When you have realized that the I does not inherently exist, it is easy to realize that what is mine does not inherently exist. So the term self actually has two different meanings. And in one context, it is referred to people, living being, the doer. So by nature, when we try to find I or me, and we think it is somewhere in our body because there's no other place where it could be found. So when we investigate where's I in our body, we cannot find there's I. We cannot find I that has its own substances. We cannot find that. But for me, who's a Tibetan, who speaks, and we all, who sleeps, who eat, so that's a sufficient proof that I does exist. I definitely does exist, but when we cannot find it, we have to say it arises depending on our thought. Because there's no other way to posit it, talk about it. So another term, the self, another meaning of the self actually occurs in the context of selfness and self-grasping, a notion that apprehends I exists completely separate from all other physical aggregations. I has its own entity, own nature. And when we talk about something that involves lots of saying I, our mind actually perceive I exists its own nature. And I can give you one example. Actually, that is also used in one of his Dalai Lama's books. So let me say, if you are accused of something that you have never done, and your reaction will be something like you get angry and you started saying, oh no, I didn't do it. So if pause there and think how I appears in your mind. I appears completely something there, its own entity. But I appears there, so when we talk about I appears there and we cannot find it, right? So when we think about this kind of situation, actually it gives us a sense of how our mind naturally and innately apprehends I exists totally from its own entity. So now, what it has to do with that, what the concept of independence has to do with others' well-being, happiness and harmony. What it has to do with it. And first, we need to know what is happiness and what is harmony. Actually, we have got different explanation from different perspective. And can we get happiness without dependent others? Can we get happiness without dependent other? So to see the value of the concept of interdependence, or to see what it has to do with other living beings, I think it is very important to realize how the problem arises due to lack of proper understanding of interdependence and practice of it in our day-to-day life. So when we say without having proper understanding of interdependence, or without lacking practice of it, it means when we are not able to see the true nature of the reality. So we are just accepting whatever appears in our mind. So once we mistakenly seeing thing exists totally from its own nature, then our mental projection actually exaggerates its goodness beyond what actually it is. So there's some sort of notion of exaggeration. And this exaggeration actually results lust, attachment, hatred, anger, and all the afflictive emotions. So this kind of exaggerated notion, self-grasping, is said to be the source of all the distraction and the mother of all the wrong-viewing attitude. The stronger the wrong-viewing attitude, the stronger attachment to yourself. And it does not bring only attachment to yourself. Also, it brings attachment to your family, to your society, to your community. Actually, it brings attachment to everything that includes you. Everything that includes. When we have a strong attachment, and then it forces us to differentiate between two things. And it also creates bias feeling. Actually, it creates bias feeling. between family, between society, between community. And in this way, instead of getting us harmony, actually it creates us separate, it forces us separate from you and me, we and them, and my and his. And it creates some sort of gap between us. And because of these, actually, every factor that involved in leading to disharmony arises, such as discrimination and injustice and intimidation. All this arises. I think it's true because where there's a society, in any society, where there's a more anger, more hatred, more jealousy, there's a less happiness. There's a less harmony. There's a less harmony. I think that's very true. So the harmony and happiness, as I said, it has to come through mutual respect to understand our fundamental qualities. And we need to know how much we are related to us, how much we are dependent to us. We need to think that day and day, and we need to practice that, and it really changes a lot. So here I have this quote, and Buddhist actually says, the reason of dependent arising cuts through all the nets of bad views. And all affective emotions are overcome through overcoming ignorance. When dependent arising is seen, ignorance does not arises. Okay, now let me change the gear and talk about the compassion. First, before talking about compassion, first I want to talk about what is our habitual feeling toward other people. What is our habitual feeling to other people? I think for the most people, actually, it depends on such circumstances. And if I say, on the way, if I saw someone is handicapped or in a very destitute, poor condition, I feel sympathy. And instead of that, if I see someone compared to me is wealthier or better educated or better placed in the society, I get envy, become more competitive and envious. So this kind of negative feeling actually prevents us seeing from sameness. All these people, whether they are fortunated or unfortunate or distant or near, we all are same. And if I may share here, or if I may share my little knowledge about science, and it is not just our feeling same, it's not just the feeling, but fundamental physical composition. Where you talk about the genes, how much gene we share, people to people, and what is the basis of the genetic materials. We talk about adenine, cytosine, guanine, we all share this fundamental, physical composition. We all are basically the same. So what is compassion? What is compassion? So Buddhists talk about different levels of compassion. At very basic level, it is some sort of empathy, ability to enter somebody's suffering and we share it. But it can be extended to such a degree that the compassion actually does not arise without effort, but it becomes some sort of unconditional, undifferentiated universal love. So to generate a compassion, so what if our love for someone is based on attraction? It could be their look. It could be their some other superficial characteristic. So our love for that person is actually liable. It changes over time. When the person starts losing his or her quality, and our feeling love for them starts diminishing. So that's why His Holiness Dhamma said, our relation purely based on attraction is always unstable. On the other hand, when we begin to perfect our compassion, neither the other appearances nor their behavior affect our underlying attitude. So we need to build our compassion. To build our compassion, actually, we need to overcome feeling of partiality. First, we need to equanimity. Once we build the equanimity, then our compassion will not depend on so and so is my friend, so and so is my brother, my sister, my wife. So we can build compassion. It's very simple recognition. As I said, fundamentally we are same. We are same, completely same. So when we build once we build a compassion, does being compassionate really means, being sacrificing self-interest? Actually not. actually, when you are being compassionate, actually it is the wisest way of fulfilling your interest. His Holiness Dalai Lama always talk about, because the compassion actually it brings forgiveness, patience, and and all these are actually what happiness consists of. So that means the more we provide, the more we are compassionate, the more we provide our own happiness. His Holiness Dalai Lama said something like that. And compassion is actually source and fruits of happiness. So when we begin to develop a genuine appreciation of the value of compassion, or look on the other begins automatically change. There's one, this one's quote by His Holiness Dalai Lama. And also, what happens if we are lack of compassion? If we are lack of compassion, then every other or activity is in danger of harming other people. Because when we ignore the question of others' well-being, we inevitably end up in hurting other people. And because the ethics of compassion help us provide the necessary foundation and motivation for both restraint and the cultivation of virtue. And let me give you one example, because if we have a temptation, some sort of deceive other people, and our compassion actually prevent us from engaging it. And if our work is being danger to be exploited by others, our compassion actually allow us to disengage from it. So basically, I don't have much time, so basically I want to conclude with my message. Basically, fundamentally, we all are same or failing fundamental physical composition, and that's pretty much what I have got to say. Thank you so much.
What you described as the sameness, the interdependence, we often call common humanity in Western science. Why do you think so many people fail to recognize common humanity? Is there some advantage to having a disposition to identify ourselves with small groups instead of extending our sense of humanity widely to all sentient beings?
Tanda nangbegi shungne tanda tenjung katawa shikdus. Chanda dila zambala nganzu tsama jing pazu da tenne ne washmato susu ani rangje phayo toni chub de wachi yo mane sigi yorwas. Nobjo ki jisok nanglo la nganzu ke shedan tawu ji yores. Ke shedan kharis labim bena common humanity sidi zambala ani ndawa mi ji ki ani tumung ki ani ta chechu se ta dayo chechu sigi wero. Cheza nganzu tsama la dinde ki tumung ki samno tangdang yimbinre tumung shedan dinde ji yor de nimbena ngui nizu langlen tar yung zambala ani do mi ji ki ani samno ta ki thabla nganzu dezen su choche chokpa do sueche ani yawa che loga de jungu doas cheda ta khada shen tu maris cheda dile zambal dile kangi khari showres kien kharla tene andinde mindu ba chungores orda.
So my answer that will be something like, from Buddhist perspective, and it's very hard to overcome the ignorance and other afflictive emotions. So from Buddhist perspective, we talk about the rebirth and reincarnation. We have been actually cycling in this samsara, and we are very much habituated to it. Being a selfish, and it's not that easy to overcome. And because of this self-grasping and other ignorance, and in our habitual feeling, actually, it is more intended to being selfish. So basically, we are very much habituated in doing that way, and it is very hard to overcome it. And we need to practice it, and we need to practice. But sometimes we know the method of the practice, but we don't bring it into practical, right? That's the problem. So if you think about more and more, and then maybe there will be a time that the people will be no more selfish, but consider more wider perspective, consider thinking about more wider picture of the world, and for the benefit of other living beings.
Thank you for a very interesting discussion and presentation. As a philosopher, I've always been thinking that the truth of people getting attracted to each other or people living in coexistence is because of the very fact of interdependence. Mm-hmm. In some subtle way, or sometimes not so subtle way, we are all dependent.
Yes.
Because of the relations which you said.
Yes.
But just merely understanding the interdependence perhaps will not help to remove the I. Because as you also said, it is when the I is not there, the mind is also not there. Mm-hmm. So what exactly is getting into the ignorance of not understanding interdependence and producing that ego? Or the classic question to Buddhism, perhaps from a Vedantic tradition of Indian philosophy, is that the I which perhaps is deluded is one aspect of I. Mm-hmm. And perhaps that is understood only if you also present a deeper source of I, which may not be eliminated, but perhaps is a unifying factor of everything. So to put a little confused question in a couple of words more, is the I is something which can be eliminated? Because if the I is eliminated, nobody would have an intention to act. So what is that which is to be done away with?
Actually, I agree what you said. The merely thinking about the interdependence may not solve all the problems that we are facing in this world. But when we think about the interdependence, actually it is basically targeting toward ignorance. And from Buddhist perspective, we talk about to get rid of the ignorance, it has to have some sort of very precise and exact antidote of it. We have to think about a very precise and exact antidote of it. Very precise and exact antidote of that is to realization of the interdependence. Because when we have that sort of ignorance, that we do have exaggeration, right? And we are accepting just what is not there. We are accepting it is something there, but completely its own nature. So it is very important from Buddhist perspective. It is very important to have a concept for interdependence and to think about it and to practice about it. And the self, the I, and I said, we need, as I said in my presentation, I make a distinction between the person, I, and something that I completely exists from its own nature. So the I that I talk about that completely does not exist in its own nature. Something when we talk about so the person, of course, I do exist, right? But the I that is something our mind perceive I that exists in its own nature, right? Its own nature. That does not exist at all. That I does not exist at all. But it is just creation of our mind. It doesn't. So that it is not there. So it's a kind of already eliminated. But the person I, the living being person I, I refer to the person, people, the doer. And we can transform our mind, but we don't say this one something that can be eliminated. So we can be enlightened, we get enlightenment, but the continuation of it goes, much deeper level.
Let me say one word. From Buddhist perspective, dependently existent phenomena and interdependently exist phenomena are mutually exclusive. So we believe in an I which is dependently existing. Therefore, it is not possible to have an I which is independently existent. But to our ordinary uninformed mind, we tend to feel that there is an I which has independent existence. So that conception of seeing the I as having independent existence is called avidya, ignorance. So that is said to be the cause for all negative emotions and all sufferings. So that kind of I must be eliminated, but not the conventional I. So I think that is the dividing line probably.
당부대 경아 뜻들 쉬어이 안딩에 저어디다 주당대 낭출로 쉐르나 대적 견제명아 된다 다시 님이 권으로 정도에서 된데까지 뭐죠 순거로 동서 순거로 되는 배대가 지소한 몽고시고 있는 쪽 펜도 청부지 랍 청부지 차도고 그래 다 이나야 다야 자는 왜 도시지도 도시 가르슬라베나 데르샤다데 당님한테 지단데 대자 남결 쳤네 야 닝지 계약이 실랑지 찍는데 이제 송대고는 세단 남결 쳤냐 닝지 계약이 근데 송대고 가지고 시작이나 안디 좀더 마서베다 님아 단데 대변 닝지 쟁게 아니 미나 동도 세제 아니 겨우 고트게 아니 득득 타고 그랬었지 야 제가 저러와 줘발라 아니 랑신 잠베 깨지 송되고 다 되게 도는 즉 아니 간데는 또 태송서 또를 즉 제시경은 나셔이
다들 ging 좋아져라 좋아디 세부 너도 진직송다
녀마데 미나 동동게 단데 미나 동동선저다데 대변닝지 쟁게 대변닝지 쟁게 미나 동동세제 안에 겨워 고트기 득득 다 그래서 제가 나해라 다 대시도 고서 저러바도 쭈버도가 이내 그런 꿈은 된닝 전부 꾸는랑 제티 송도동아 안 디톨라다 즉 어저도 또 도고서도 안 디톨라 즉 사실나 나셔
I will try to translate the question actually that he raised. So compassion, so it is related to compassion. And sometimes we can have compassion to those are very much involving attachment. We can have compassion to those people and to those who are having very much hatred. And there's one case in ancient time. There's one case. Minat Dungdungching is the one person and who has been doing lots of bad distractions. And one other person actually killed him because his motivation, because of his intention was kind of associated with the compassion, and actually these intention, the compassionate intention, drive him to kill that person. So the compassion, being compassionate, how is it possible to kill someone? The question is something like that. So to answer that, from my point of view, so we need to think about the consequences. So, and from Buddhist perspective, when we talk about the compassion and helping other people, is very much related to our motivation. And the motivation, if you do not kill that person, if you do not kill that person, if it is certain that that person will kill many other people or other creature, and if you don't find any other alternative way, to stop that person, doing that kind of negativity, and maybe you are run out of your option, and your motivation is, of course, to help other people, and that's the only your choice, and you have to make that.
Lodoe Sangpo la idi sunang sungra, ani tundi tang tembe chido tu tumala ani nyepar tu ani nangchu na sungwe ani tunduk tang ani nyingji ni metame runga chayo res. Ani ti sungwe ina ani nangchu tang dewa mepe tona chido nang la tundi ki chido ani tunduk tang ani Jangtse tola ani zhongda dewa yo ma yo simi.
Tundi tang ani?
Tundi tang tembe chido tu tumala nyepar tu ani nangchu na shepe ani tunduk tang 아니 인진이 지마차를 송송 아니 디소이나 가지 아니 나초다 만데 토나 지도나라 둔디체 지도 아니 로소다 아니 두루이들 대자 야요 말이스.
And his question is more related to the harmony, and he said something like, I've been talking about Buddhist perspective, and to have a harmony. Actually, it seems it is very necessary. It seems it is necessary to have a Buddhist approach. And can we have a harmony without the Buddhist approach? Can't we have a harmony society without applying Buddhist approach? And because I have been saying more, and to answer that question, actually, definitely there are another approach to have a more to build a harmonious society. It doesn't have to apply Buddhist way, Buddhist method or strategy to that. And I have been talking about Buddhist since I have been talking since I'm here as a representative of Buddhist. So I just talk about that part. Basically, the definition of the happiness harmony has a different, definition we got from from all of the presenters, and it seems harmony. In Tibetan, it means tundik. Actually, we apply only tundik. Actually, I think apply in the context of context of society, the culture, and I don't think it has something to do with the plants or something like that. But one of the professors have been talking about. But I definitely think there are other approaches to build more harmonious society.
There is a question from the audience. Is it possible to get happiness from enemies?
Oh yeah, very good question. And from the beginning, actually I said that the happiness is more subjective, and it is not objective. It's not something there. And to get happiness, we have to strengthen our mind and tame our mind. And maybe you can. Maybe the enemy can be a great kind of subject to practice your patience. And when there's an enemy, you get an opportunity to build or strengthen your patience. And patience and compassion. It's a kind of creating, to build compassion and kind of patience, all other positive qualities that we cherish about. So definitely, there's a way to get a compassion and happiness from the enemies.
chimba tangsa chimba khorangi yu khorangi chi yorwa tega nansing azu danda da tundi da deji tudub da ningji thon nangbe ta so joshi di thola tega na ningji lai do azu ningji la chidang kare la gona na ningji la da suzuki ning da de mi shimba gi do donga la ni mi gi tende thon suzu de la pembe pensam chi tene go go res tega na sing azu gi ningji la kese gi yul de ningji de manu ba chi ge go res ra manu ba da manu ba megen de jo la nyam da tega na sing soba la de chodum chi na gom go res tene chi go ra yanzo chojin xiao na azu gi changma la ningji chi go res chamba chi go res a soba gom go res chojin xiao de yang azu soba la de chodum chi na gom go da mi cho도 많이 버시는 거죠. 서봐 공부해요 말았어. 김세야 말았어. 내가 나시 닝제 라야디 닝제 공부해나 닝제 그 많이 버시로 공부하라 말도 제가 상말로 닝제 공부해요 말았어. 그럼 대체가 하는 공부하는 데 생각했어요.
He talked about in Buddhist, he talked about the compassion and all the being patient. And in Buddhist textbook, most textbook, one of the major textbooks, it is called Perfection of Wisdom. And in the textbook, it mentioned that how to be a generous, how to be a generous, and to be a generous, what kind of antidote we have to build. And in the same way, to be a patient, actually, in the textbook, it is written that to strengthen your patience, actually the object itself must be something like a wrathful. or aggressive, or something that, something that stood against you or something like that. And in terms of compassion also, when we try to generate compassion, and the object has to be something like, in a destitute condition, or something like, in a destitute condition, or some sort of, destitute condition. So in that sense, how can we, develop our compassion to all living beings? The object has to be something like, in a very destitute condition. So how can we build compassion? And so for that, for this question, the answer for these questions. So I don't think that to build a compassion, somebody need to be in a poor, destitute condition, and also we need to think about the nature of the impermanence. And someone is maybe, for the temporarily, someone is at a very, a better place, or very educated, living a very, satisfying, lifestyle. But do they live in that state forever? So it changes. So their lifestyle changes. It depends on lots of factors. So I think, so in that way, if you think that, of course, and of course, I think, as I said, of course, everyone wants happiness. Everyone, all the living beings, they don't want suffering. So just thinking about that, it doesn't matter, as I said, whether they are, fortunate or unfortunate, but we all are same. So in that way, I think we can generate compassion to all living beings.
And secondly, when we say destitute, it doesn't have to be only in terms of material belongings. Even those who are in high post and having a lot of wealth, they may be totally bereft of good qualities or spirituality or love and compassion. So therefore, they are also poor in terms of spiritual achievement and understanding. So therefore, because of that, they have negative emotions, they keep on wandering in the samsara. So therefore, the Buddhas, they feel compassionate how these people are suffering due to negative emotions. So I think this morning we had enough for harmony and happiness for the mind. Let us try to maintain harmony of the body.